matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, case number BA096.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you.
Taylor, we are recording, and I wanted to wish you, while we're recording, a happy Mother's Day.
You
How's your
Mother's
Mother's Day
Day.
going?
It is good. I woke up and I was like, okay, well, I'm not getting up until they come and get me. And then they brought me a very nice breakfast and it was very fun.
Was it like the Beethoven breakfast where there was a bunch of eggshells inside of it?
No, they did a really good job. It was very delicious. And then yeah, Miles definitely like jumped on the bed and like tried to move it around. And then everybody had to eat in the room and then it was the whole thing, but it was very cute.
A lot of the pile-on mom morning.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah,
Well,
it's fun.
hope it's going to be a good one for the rest of the evening.
Thank you.
We can go in and dive in if you want to introduce us.
Let's do it. Hi, everyone. Happy Mother's Day. Welcome to Doomed to Fail. We bring you history's most notorious disasters and greatest failures twice a week. I'm Taylor, joined by Fars.
And we are going to be covering something fun probably today, at least on my side. I don't know if yours is going to be more doomsy or funsy.
It's doomsy, but it's funsy.
Who's going first today?
I believe that it is you.
Ah, okay. Well, then
Because
mine
I
will be
think you
fun.
did. I think you did. It doesn't matter, but I do think that last week we re-released because we were tired. Fine.
We
Um,
deserve it.
yeah. And let's see. Oh no, I did the. I guess I can go first. I should go first.
Cool.
Is that
Far
cool?
away. Yeah, of course.
Okay. Because I did James Murray and Dr. Minor the last one
That's
that we
right.
did.
Yep, you're right.
Cool. Okay, so mine is loading. It is an oldie but a goodie. And this one was suggested by our friend Justin, who we don't know in real life, but who had emailed about also not necessarily wanting a dog. So, Justin, I see you, I hear you. And Justin asked if we could cover the Donner Party. And I said, hell yeah, we can.
That
That's what we're
is
doing.
a very fun topic.
Yes, and very, very doomed. So, both.
The most
Both of
doomed.
those. Yeah. So I obviously re-listened to the last podcast on the Left series. I think it's 2 episodes. It's good. And I reread because I read the book that they referenced after they did their show because they really couldn't recommend it more. By Daniel James Brown, called "The Indifferent Stars Above," which is like a full account of the whole thing. So pick that up if you
That
want
is,
to
if
read it
you
all.
ever want to get into last podcast, I would say the Donner Party episodes are probably their best episode. That's the one I
Yeah, it's really good.
re-listened to the most.
Yeah, I liked it a lot. Oh, good. So you'll know what's going on.
Yep.
So we are on the Oregon Trail, which kids still do. Florence was doing Oregon Trail shit like yesterday in school. And I remember doing the Oregon Trail on paper because I don't know, it was the early 90s, but I think it was like available on the computer, but we also had a way to play it on paper. Do you remember that?
No, we never did paper. That was part of our when we were in elementary school, we had computer lab, and that was
Mm-hmm.
part of our learning how computers work, which is like
Hmm.
kind of bad educating
I
kids,
mean, they
but
didn't really
whatever.
do much. I don't know.
Okay, fair
Um,
enough. That was probably the most you could do with the computer at that time.
yeah. I remember like got to work on your manifest, and mine, I was just like adding twine to it because twine didn't weigh anything.
Yeah, it was
But you could be
logical.
like, should I bring my piano? I don't know. So I guess for anyone not in America, every American child plays the Oregon Trail, where you have to get your family across the mountains to Oregon or California safely, and they like throw all this stuff at you, like starvation, bears, no water, snow.
It is deceptively fun.
Yeah, yeah. It is a rite of passage for the American child, and it is fun.
Which if they were to come out with like a new one for like Xbox, I would totally do it.
I wonder if they have. We just don't know.
Yeah, that's very, very likely.
Anyway, we are in 1846, and we are going to start off in Illinois, but let me give you some context based on some of the other topics that we've covered. So in 1801, people started to go on honeymoons in Niagara Falls. So this is like the first time people started having honeymoons. And I forgot about this, but the first person to go on a honeymoon in Niagara Falls was Theodosia Burr, who was Aaron Burr's daughter. And I always think that's interesting. Um, and we'll talk about honeymoon in a second. That's why I bring it up. The Alamo fell in 1836. The Opium Wars started in 1839. The Terror, and the Erebus, the ships that set off in the Arctic, started off in 1845. The Long Walk of the Navajo by Kit Carson will be in 1864, and James Murray will start working on the dictionary in 1870. That was my last one. So we're kind of in the middle of all this, but there's stuff happening obviously all over the world that
Cool.
we've talked about before. So the American people want to go west for adventure, for opportunity. Do you remember? I think this is like a little bit before this, but do you remember the movie Far and Away with Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman?
Nope.
So it's like I remember watching it in school in German class for absolutely no reason because it's about Irish immigrants. But um, they are like Irish immigrants in New York. This is a little bit later. I think it's like supposed to be like 1870-ish, but they go to Oklahoma to get land, and the government is like, "There's all this land. You can like pick a plot," and they have like a run for the land where they literally have like your guy's on a horse and he's gonna run and try to like get the stake to get the land. So it was like when you did a claim to stake or a stake to claim, you literally like put your stake in the claim of land and said, "This is mine."
And fun fact, that is the reason why the Oklahoma University or University of Oklahoma called OU, their team is called the Sooners because it was named after a bunch of settlers who went before the shot clock was announced of when you can go.
Exactly. That's what happens in Far and Away as well. So there's like that happening. People are excited to like, expand their living space. Of the people that oh, also like the land isn't like available. People live there, but
Right. Right.
you know, we know. Of the people we meet, 87 people of the Donner Party signed up to go together. They will get stuck in the Sierra Nevadas, like the beer, on Truckee Lake, which is now called Donner Lake.
Yep.
So I have a joke that is like a family inside joke. So my brother went to UNR, University of Nevada, Reno, which is right where this is, and him and his friends would go tubing on the river. And one time, like they were tubing all day long, and they had like a cooler of beer, and they were like laying on these things and having a great time. And his friend Leah like kind of looked up and was like, "Where are we?" And this like woman was like on a canoe going by, and she goes, "You're on the Truckee River." And so we say that all the time because I think it's so funny because they're like, of course they're on the river. They knew that. But she was like, "Where on the river are we?" Anyway, so I also go with that. No, the Truckee River. So of the 87 people, 48 survived, and mostly women survived, which is a note maybe because women need less calories to survive. But this is also in like a turning point in humanity where women don't die all the time during childbirth. So like now statistically women live longer than men due to like lifestyle usually, kind of things. But before like the mid 1800s, late 1800s, women died all the time.
They
Of
also
child.
live longer than men because y'all get to stay on the life rafts. We've been over
That
this.
doesn't happen often enough for that to be
It happens
statistically
all the
relevant.
time, I
It
think.
does not. No, no. So one way to get there is to go on the Oregon Trail from Independence, Missouri. And there is a well-laid path, and then there's the Hastings Cutoff, which is new, which we'll get to. But that's what's going to happen. So that's what's going to happen, but I'll tell you how we get there. So first, let's meet Lansford Hastings. He is not great. He was born in 1819 in Ohio, and he wants to be Emperor of California, which is not a job, but he would like to have it if it were to become available.
Yeah, this is all coming back to me.
Yeah, so he is a man who wants people to come to California. He wants to lead people into California. He wants to be an explorer, all of these things. So he writes a book called The Emigrant's Guide to Oregon and California. And in it, he writes, quote, "The most direct path would be leave the Oregon route about 200 miles east of Fort Hall, thence bearing west-southwest to the Salt Lake, and thence continuing down to the Bay of San Francisco." End quote. Which is not true because it's almost impossible to do that. There's huge mountains, huge cliffs, and then a huge salt desert. And Hastings had never done it. He had told people you could do it, but he was like making it up. He had never done it.
Okay, one thing I'll call out is this is still like a modern problem, and I'm gonna go on a little bit of a soapbox here because
Do it.
every time I go to this one restaurant in Austin, there's a very obvious way to get there. And for some reason, if I put it in Google Maps, it routes me into these neighborhoods where then I have to cross the busiest intersection that's like 6 lanes of traffic, whereas I could have
Right.
just taken like a protected left at a red light.
Do you remember when you had that Uber driver that wouldn't take lefts?
That person was crazy. Okay, quick story. So for anybody, I was in LA, and at the time, I guess it was my fiance at the time, we called an Uber to take us to work. And then we get in the car and the person was like, we're like, oh, just go up here and take a left because I was like, just drop her off at her place and then take me to work.
Hmm.
And we get to this intersection, Hollywood Boulevard, a super busy intersection, and the person says, I don't take lefts. I don't take left turns. They're like, oh, this is going to be crazy. And they just accelerated blindly into the intersection and just popped a left. And then we got to like her place and I was like, we're done. Thank you. We got out
I'm
of the
gonna get
car.
out. I'm all set. I'll
Yeah.
walk from here. That's so funny.
And I
Um,
never try to take anybody's livelihood away, but that person, I made a point to not stop until I got a response from Uber. That like you have to
yeah. No, that's
ban
not
that
safe.
person.
That's not safe.
That's not
Yeah.
safe. Yeah.
Oh my God, it's so funny. But yes, yes, often there are many routes to get places, but sometimes a shortcut or like a weird one is not great. So the Donner Party, especially James Reed, who we'll meet, really believed this. They believed Hastings. And also, again, when Hastings says California, California is Mexico. And so they are illegal immigrants into Mexico walking over the Sierra Nevadas. So
Is that true?
yeah,
I thought it was native land. I don't think it was Mexico
it
back
is
then.
Mexico. California is going to become a republic in the middle of this.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Good.
So, and the Mexican-American War is going to be like at the end of this saga slash going to go on for another however many years after this. Anyway, so Hastings, oh, so to do this, to get people to come to California and like be a thing, he wanted to like get a bunch of land in California. He killed a bunch of Native Americans. He's just not a good guy. Later, Hastings is going to be a colonel in the Confederate Army, and he's so mad that they lose that he tries to do a thing, which is a whole thing that I did not even read into, where they tried to get Confederate families to leave the South and go to Brazil and start colonies in Brazil. And so he writes The Emigrant's Guide to Brazil in 1867, and he's ready to like do that again, but he dies of yellow fever in the Virgin Islands before he gets there. So that's Lansford Hastings, kind of a charlatan.
So you said again, he never actually did the path.
No, he's going to try to do it later, but he tries to do it much after his book has already been published.
Yep.
People have been reading it and like trying to do it, you know?
Yep. Yep. Got it.
So our party, the Donner Party themselves, are a bunch of Americans who've been like in America, I guess, for like 200 years. Some of them have like were in like they're what was I going to say? They're children of the Revolution. Like their dads were in the American Revolution. And there are also some German immigrants and then a couple Native folks who are joining as well. So they're going to eventually be called the Donner Party, but a lot of it starts with a man named James Reed. So let's start with the Reed family. And I'm going to read you a lot of names, but I just wanted to bring it out now that like also most of the people on this trip are kids,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
like literal infants in some cases, which is fucking terrible.
If I recall correctly, this family's cursed.
Yes. Well, actually, none of the Reeds die. It's not great
Oh,
for them,
that's
but the
right.
entire
That's
Reed family
right.
makes it.
That's
So James Fraser Reed, he's only 45. He's a wealthy businessman from Illinois, and in everything that I was reading would make you think he was like a gnarled 65-year-old man, but he's 45. But he has like lived a pretty interesting life. He was in the Black Hawk Wars in the same battalion as Abraham Lincoln, which was a war led by a person named Black Hawk, who was a leader of the Sauk Indians, which also I want to learn more about as well. Um, and then his wife Margaret was 32. They had I'm going to again read a bunch of names, but Virginia, Martha, James, and Thomas were their kids. Also, Margaret's mother, Sarah Keys, came. She was 70. And there's also a bunch of people who are like hired help. They're like servants, they're tradesmen, they're people who are coming to like help with the trip. So there's Eliza, Bayless, Milt, Walter, James, and Hiram, all with them. So another strong indicator of survival in situations like this. So like I imagine even like in the Titanic, this would also be something that would be a thing, is you're more likely to survive if you're in a family rather than in a single man. So a lot of the single men, when it came down to it, like if I have a little bit of food, like I'm going to feed my family first,
yeah, of course.
and look out for your family first. So the single men, like they banded together in some cases, but in some cases they were like really, really alone in this whole thing. So the Donner family, which is George and Jacob Donner, they're brothers. George is 60. He's a farmer from Illinois. He is elected the leader in a little bit. His wife's name is Tamsin. She's 45 years old. It's his second marriage, so he has Elitha and Leanna from his first marriage, and they have three other kids, Francis, Georgia, and Eliza. Then Jacob Donner, the brother, is 56. He's with his wife Elizabeth and their kids, Solomon, William, George, Mary, Isaac, Samuel, and Lewis. Lewis is only three. So, like, right now, the youngest kids are three, but there's even kids that are younger than this. The Donner's employees are Noah, Samuel, John, Baptiste Trudeau, and Luke Halloran. So, just people who are with them. Luke Halloran actually was like on his own separate trip and he got tuberculosis and they picked him up and took him just to be nice. So, that was nice of them. There's the Breen family, Patrick Breen and his wife Peggy. Their kids are John, Edward, Patrick, Simon, James, Peter, and Isabella, who was only one. When they start, she's 11 months old. Ugh. And then they have a friend named Patrick Dolan. And then also there's a man named James Kleiman who is there as well. Kleiman, to note, had seen George Washington in person, which I think is fun
That's
to
fun.
say. Yeah. There's the Graves family, Franklin, his wife Elizabeth, their kids, Sarah. Sarah is the daughter of Franklin and Elizabeth. She's 22. She was newly married to a guy named Jay, and she's the subject of the book The Indifferent Stars Above. He tries to follow like her actual journey and like figure out like what happened to her afterwards. But basically, like her backstory and everyone's backstory is like they wanted a different life. They wanted more space. They wanted to get out of like where they were in Illinois. They were really sick in Illinois. They had something called the Illinois Shakes, which was probably just malaria from mosquitoes, but everybody was sick. They just wanted like something else. But they've already been through a lot living there. Um, I mentioned the honeymoon earlier because this is like kind of her and Jay's honeymoon. They get to go on a trip with their family, which is what a honeymoon was for a very long time. It was like a party, a trip you to go on to be able to see your family that couldn't make it to the wedding, you know? So it was like, you know, an adventure, and they're excited. With them, the other siblings are Mary, William, Eleanor, Lavina, Nancy, Jonathan, Franklin, and Elizabeth, who is also just 1 year old. And then another single man that joins them is John Snyder. He's 25. He joins them to be a teamster. And I'll talk about him later, but John Snyder is the hot guy. So there's like one hot guy on this trip, and it's John Snyder.
I can believe
That'll
it.
be
I
it'll be
mean,
important later.
every group has one.
Yeah. There is the Murphy family. There's poor Lavinia, whose fate is also like everyone's very terrible, but she's 37 years old. When people find her at the end of this, they think she's like in her 50s because she's just like she's a skeleton. She looks terrible. She does not get out.
Yeah.
She looks awful. Their kids are John, Mary, Lemuel, William, Simon, and then they have a daughter Sarah who has her husband, and then another daughter Harriet who also has her kids, who are Naomi and Catherine, who's also one. So many people. That's about are there. The Eddy family is William Eddy, his wife Eleanor, their two kids, James and Margaret, 3 and 1. And the Kasselberg family, they're German immigrants. There's Louis, Elizabeth, Julianne, another Louis, an infant, and then they have two people named Charles Berger, and then like an elderly Belgian man just named Hardcoop, who sounds fun, but he's seen a bunch. And then there's the Wolfinger party, the McCutcheon family, and then some more single men. So just a bunch of families, handful of single men, but like mostly kids on this. So there's also some people who are going to go like they're not always together from the very beginning. They like add new wagons, people leave, all those things. There's two men only at the very end named Louis and Salvador. They were two Miwok Native Americans, and they joined to try to guide them out at one point, so they'll be there later. But, so that's everybody. And then here are the plans. So first, you have to pack your wagon with everything that you own. Have you ever seen a covered wagon to get the size in your head?
Yeah, I can visualize it.
Because it was bigger. I saw one at a museum in San Bernardino, and it was a lot bigger than I thought it was going to be.
They're very
Like,
tall. They're much
yeah,
taller than I thought they would be.
yeah. So like the vision I had before I saw a real one was smaller than they actually are. So they're pretty big and they're heavy. So it's good and bad because you can take your stuff, but also like you have to go over rivers. So there's times where they like have like a week delay because they have to build a bridge and bring like 30 wagons over a river that like no one's built a bridge on before. So that takes forever. And they're pulled by like oxen and it goes really, really slowly. But let's pretend that we're in a family of five and we need stuff for 4 to 6 months. We don't know how long it's going to take. We're going to be on this walk for 4 to 6 months. And you're not riding in the wagon, you're walking next to the
Oh
wagon,
yeah.
by the way. So typical wagon supplies, you would bring your wagon, obviously, and your animals. So you have your wagons like 10 to 12 feet long, 4 to 6 feet wide. There's a cover. It can carry like 2,000 to 2,500 pounds of stuff. Um, Again, most of them were pulled by oxen. They were slower than horses, but like could take more. So that's why you would use an ox rather than a horse. And also you'd bring like cows and horses. You'd also bring food. So per adult, you would need like almost 200 pounds of flour, 20 pounds of cornmeal, 150 pounds of bacon, 40 pounds of sugar, 10 pounds of coffee. And the coffee was not like ground. They were like green coffee beans. And you had to like roast them and then make yourself coffee.
Jeez.
And then so like all this food, which is like, I mean, I imagine heavy and also takes up a lot of space, plus you have to like make stuff out of it. After that, it's like a lot of work. So they had cows. They could get milk from their cows. They could also put the milk from the cows in a barrel and have it just in the wagon, and it would churn itself into butter from
Oh,
all the
nice.
bumping
That's
up and
smart.
down, which is nice. So there's that. You also like could hunt probably, but in some places you weren't going to be able to, and you had to like plan for that. But
Right.
as long as you could hunt, you would. You would have clothes, but only like two changes of clothes per person for a 6 month walk. It's gonna get gross
Yeah.
real fast. You would have some soap. 25 pounds of soap would be like the suggestion for your family, which seems like a lot of soap. But it's for you, it's for the clothes. You'd also have to like bring tools and stuff for starting your life. So you bring farming tools because you were going to start a farm in California. So you had to like bring all that with you. You would have like a lot of some pots and pans that were pretty heavy. Like a Dutch oven, I have a Dutch oven, it's heavy. But you could like, use that to bake bread, to make stews. You also need stuff to like start a fire. You need water. So whenever you are near clean water, you put it in a barrel and save it. But like that water is going to go bad and be full of grossness anyway.
And it's gonna be heavy.
Yeah, very heavy. And then you also might bring some stuff that's like you'd bring your Bible, you'd bring candles, you'd bring toys for the kids, maybe like a clock. I do remember in my Oregon Trail manifest, they were like, "Do you want to bring your piano?"
That's
And I'd be like,
ridiculous. The
"No,"
answer is obviously
but I get it. In some cases, people would like just have to abandon stuff on the side of the road as their oxen got more tired. And then sometimes they would bury it, hoping to come back and get it later, things like that. But most of the stuff that people brought didn't make it all the way there, especially for the donner party, but also for a lot of people, they had to get rid of stuff. So the Reeds, though, somehow had a two-story wagon, which like sounds insane. So they made it so that like the inside was like a box. You entered it through the middle, and then the second story was where you would like sit, and then there are beds on the second story as well.
that feels like it'll be like a pain for that oxen to pull stuff like something like that.
Exactly. That's not going to last forever, but like it also seems like very luxurious and nice to be able to have that. So okay, you have your stuff, we have our people, and the thing to remember is that you need to leave early. Like you need to leave by April 1st to be able to get over the mountains before there's too much snow. And that's on like the regular Oregon Trail that everybody knows about. So stuff is going to happen that's going to delay you anyway. So like you need to plan for delays to happen. So the initial group leaves Springfield, Illinois on April 11th, and they start walking west. On the 23rd, John Snyder joins. He's handsome and carefree. Again, he's the hot guy, so he's fun to have around. He dances. He's cute. He's like full of life. He's there. Um, and again, they're like meeting people and leaving people along the way. Like last podcast described it as like an accordion. So you're not like in a line. Like one family might go ahead a couple hours and you come up together, then you circle up your wagons, then you move on for the next day. So you're not always together. The Donners and the Reeds leave Independence, Missouri on May 12th, and they meet others on the road. They have a 4-day delay because Sarah Keys, who's 70 years old, dies, and like that's expected, but they have to bury her and all that. So I have a whole bunch of cultural notes, and the first one is about death. So this is when you still care for your dead bodies. So the reason it takes 4 days to have Sarah Keys' funeral is because they have a funeral for her. They like get a box and wash her body and put her in nice clothes and bury her and mourn for a day and like do all of these things. So right now in America, especially, it's called the death industry, and it's like $1 billion industry, obviously. So it costs a lot of money to die. to have a funeral, to go to a funeral parlor, to get a coffin, to get a plot. All those things are expensive. And the death industry came out of the Civil War because before the Civil War, you would do it by yourselves. So if you died, your family would, wash your body, dress your body. You'd sit in the living room for a couple days to make sure you were really dead. If they had ice, they'd put ice underneath you, hoping for the best, and then they would bury you like in the backyard.
I'm
And that
I'm
was
glad the death
great.
industry exists.
Well, I don't love it. I mean, I would rather be buried in my backyard than like embalmed and buried in like a
I don't want my
concrete
family
box.
washing my body.
Well, I mean, it's like I also read. I think I said this before, but I've read a book called "Smoke Is in Your Eyes" by Caitlin Doughty, the woman who is a mortician, and it like helps people understand death more if you were like near it, you know?
Yeah, I
Anyway,
guess. I
I
don't
don't
know.
want to do any of these
I
things,
don't, yeah,
but
I don't want to be around it.
But after the Civil War, during the Civil War, you wanted to like, see your dead, but they were far away. So that's when they started embalming people, and it started to be a job to move dead bodies around. So that started to be like what we have now. Also on the road, kids are going to die a lot. There's a lot of kids that die anyway, but there's all sorts of ways that kids died on the Oregon Trail. They drowned crossing the river. They just walked away and were never found again because you can get lost so easily in like the reeds or in the woods. Sometimes they were captured by native tribes. They got bit by rattlesnakes. They got struck by lightning. They got kicked by horses. They got hit by hail. Guns would just go off all the time because it's not like there's a safety on them. So that could happen. They get food poisoning. 19 or 1846 this year is not the year there's cholera on the trail, but that will happen. There'll be a year when like half people die of cholera. Also, if your husband dies, you're fucked. Like you need to have a man to take care of you and your family. If you don't have one, other families will like try to help you, but essentially you have to try to manage it all by yourself. And sometimes they would just leave single women and their kids behind because they couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah, it's rough
Because you need
going.
someone to like help you with the big things. There's a woman that was mentioned in the book who's not part of the Donner Party, but a woman named Polly Owen was left for dead with her kids, and someone picked her up and took her. And then later she went on to get married and have four sets of twins. That's just fun,
Oh, nice.
but
Good for
for
her.
no reason. But like, how scary! They just leave you
Yeah.
in the middle of nothing. Um, Also, being a woman is terrible. Lots of gross things, like you try not to get pregnant as much best as you can, but like part of the reason you do that is like weird douches and like things and like weird sponges and everything smells terrible, and you always have a yeast infection like almost always. And then if you got pregnant, they didn't like acknowledge their pregnancy until the quickening, which is when you feel the baby, which is like 3 months in. So before that, if they stopped getting their period and thought that maybe they were pregnant, they would do things like ride a horse and try to get rid of it, try to like unblock their period, but
Uh,
like they knew they were pregnant, but like, so they would like take poisons and like fun things like nightshade and foxglove that sound like a witch would give you to have an abortion. But they would have
right.
that. Um, so all of that's terrible. And then also everyone is annoying because you're on this long trip with them.
It does sound kind of exhausting. I just got
You
home from
know?
a family trip, and as much as I
Yeah.
had fun with it, I was like, I want to be alone.
Yeah, no, and you got to be alone and you had food and you didn't have to walk the entire time. There's a podcast I've listened to before called The History of the Crusades, and it's been around for a long time. It's on episode 329. But I remember in some of the beginning episodes talking about like the first Crusades. Like, even then, the kids on the road to Jerusalem were like, are we there yet?
I'm
And that
sure.
was,
Yeah.
thousands of years ago. So that's just a tale as old as time. Kids are going to be annoying. Everyone's going to be mad at each other. Some people aren't fighting, and that's the teens. That's because they're probably going to marry each other, which is true. Like if you're in a wagon train and you're going to a blank slate and you don't know what you're going to see when you get there, and there's like two people your age on the wagon train, you're going to find someone and be like, I'm probably going to marry them, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So they would sing and dance and fiddle, and John Snyder would dance, and it sounds like he and Marianne Graves were going to get married. Like they were like eyeing each other on the road. And then I think well, no, another note, so many notes, another note is you need more food when you're walking all day, obviously. Like you are constantly moving. So Daniel James Brown did a little bit of math, and like Sarah Graves, who he followed in his book, was tall, maybe 5'8", and probably weighed like 125 pounds. So she needed like 1,600 calories to maintain if she did nothing. If she just like sat around all day. Because she's walking constantly, she needs like 3 to 4,000 calories, which is absolutely not getting. And like you need fat and you need salt, and you need these things that get like harder and harder to get. So they're getting very lean and skinny like very fast on
Well,
bread.
we should preface all this with the reason that's happening is because this trail that they chose to go on was dramatically more difficult and longer than they
Well,
thought.
they're not even on that trail yet. They're just
They're not even
regular
on the trail.
walking
Okay, got it. Okay,
because you're just walking for like 8 or 9 hours a day.
got it.
Like so, either of you do it or not, like it's going to be like that. And you can also there's also science behind how mad you get when you're hungry. Because you can live for a while without food, but you're not obviously not happy. It like messes with you in every way possible, you know?
Yeah.
So other things, like I was telling you earlier, California is becoming a republic. They're going through a lot of Native American areas. Like they meet the Pawnee. Some of them are nice. Some of them will steal their stuff and laugh at them, like literally like steal their cattle and laugh as they run away with it, which is kind of funny, but that will happen. So now we're back to the Donner Party themselves. That's just like notes on the time period, notes on what you'd bring, and notes on everybody who was there. And now everybody who's going is in Laramie, Wyoming, and it is June. So they left mid-April. Now it's June. Wyoming is drier than they've been in before, so they are starting to get really dry and dirty. There's like dust everywhere. It's like inches of dust, like kind of on everything, and it's getting starting to get like really, really miserable. They're a little bit behind, but so far it's not too bad. So I think this is the point where someone like wrote in their journal, I'd say the trouble is in getting started. Like it's not going to get worse than this,
So
which you should
optimistic.
never write down.
So
Yeah.
nobody knocked on wood. That was a
Yeah,
problem.
for real. So now it's July and they're walking through Wyoming, and this is where they make their decision. So they get to the point, they need to go the regular route or take the shortcut by Hastings, which again isn't short and hasn't been done. But he said it would take off 300 miles on their trip. So some people they're with don't do it and they go somewhere else. They even meet someone that James Reed knew from his time in the Black Hawk War. Who's kind of walking the opposite direction. And he says, like, hey man, turn back, like, don't do this. But they do it anyway. So on July 20th, 20 wagons who decide to take the Hastings cutoff from Fort Bridger, Wyoming, elect George Donner as their leader. And this is their like very last chance to turn around and take the well-worn path. At Fort Bridger, which is like an outpost, kind of like a convenience store, essentially on the way there. There is someone who wrote a letter to the people who were the proprietors of Fort Bridger and said, do not let people take this shortcut. It is not a shortcut. It does not work. But they didn't tell the Donner Party that because if they did, then like they might lose their business, you know?
So yeah, so greedy.
Yeah, it's like if your
Is
if your convenience store is like on the highway and they shut down the highway, it's like you're fucked. But
I
also,
thought that Donna was named Reed's replacement later on.
no, this is before Reed leaves.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is called the Parting of the Ways, and the Donner Party turns south into Utah's Wasatch Mountains. They think that Hastings is going to be able to meet them. Like they've never actually met Hastings in real life, but he said that he would be there waiting for anybody who wanted to take the cutoff. By the time they get to the spot that he said he would be, they actually find a letter from Hastings in a bush, which is
So nuts.
so they find this letter and he's like, actually, it's a little bit hard. I'm a little bit in front of you. Hold on. I'll come back and meet you. So they wait for a little bit and they send some men ahead and they're like, hey, this is actually a lot more rocky and a lot more steep than we thought. Is this still going to work? And Hastings was like, yeah, but like go a little bit that way and like pointed another direction and they went that way instead. But again, like Hastings doesn't know what he's talking about. And he kind
It
of just like
is
slinks away.
it is crazy to think like now how impossible it is to really figure things out on your own without like GPS. And these people
Yeah.
are doing it across country with like a note and stashed in a bush.
I can't believe that they got it. It's like
So crazy.
actually insane. And like I also was flying over the mountains on my way home from Atlanta this week thinking, this is super easy. Real
Yes.
lucky that I can do this.
Yes.
For all the shit we talk about flying, it was super easy to get from Atlanta to Vegas and from Vegas to Palm Springs. Um, so they have to go over the mountains in the wagons. Again, like walking over it would be hard, but they have wagons and animals. And then they get to the Great Salt Lake Desert, which is 80 miles of nothing. It is hot and dry, and there's no water and there's no vegetation. And so they're walking across this, what that Hastings told them this desert would take them 2 days, and it took them five, which is a huge difference when your animals are dying. So some of the animals were dying. They would walk at night because it was so hot. You probably remember this, but there's like a part in one of the men's journals where they name a campsite Mad Woman Camp.
Yes, I remember this.
And like the women probably just like have been mad for a very long time. So you just noticed these women are mad.
Yeah.
Um, while they're walking, some of the Shoshone steal their things. Like it's not great. They rest at a hot springs, but a hot springs isn't drinkable, Like they can't drink the sulfuric water. So other things that happen during this time, like a boy falls and almost gets his leg amputated. They like hire a mountain man to try to cut it off, but they're like, no, let's not do this. Again, we're really lucky that it's not amputation is like the number one thing for a broken leg
So
anymore.
real quick for context, because I'm looking at the map from Fort Bridger, the traditional trail would lead you north so that you
Hmm.
approach Sumter Fort, which is basically Sacramento now, from the
Hmm.
south, or sorry,
Hmm.
from the north.
Hmm.
But the Hastings Cutoff takes them down south, and
Hmm.
that's the big divide. Like if you actually look at it on a map, it's not a whole trail. It actually matches up to the trail at some point, but it only does that midway into Nevada, which is kind of interesting.
Right, and then it takes, but the shortcut adds an extra like 300 miles.
It adds miles. It doesn't
Yeah,
retract miles, and it adds the worst miles because you're
exactly.
cutting across the Sierra Nevada.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, at some point, like an old man named Mr. Hardcoop, his feet were just so bad, like their shoes are falling apart. Also, they're not wearing like nice shoes. They're wearing like leather shoes are going to fall apart immediately. And his feet are just so bad, he just stops and they leave him and he dies. William Pike is shot by accident and dies. And then the hot guy dies, which
Oh.
is a bummer. And it reminds me of a certain television show that just killed the hot guy that I no longer am interested in watching.
Is this about Last of Us? Because I didn't
It
watch
is.
that.
Yes,
Okay.
it is. I'm not watching it without Pedro Pascal. There's no reason to. So please keep listening, even though the hot guy's dead to this story. And it's not a spoiler. If you really like Last of Us, you would know that it happened in the game, which I did not know, but like, whatever. October 5th, everyone is mad. And James Reed and John Snyder are trying to get some oxen to move. And Snyder gets frustrated and he hits the ox and then he hits Reed. And Reed stabs Snyder in the chest and he dies. And everyone was mad because you need a hot guy. And also, he was nice and fun. And Reed's not as fun or nice, you know?
Understandable.
So they wanted to hang him for the crime, but instead they let him go with just a horse. His kids come out that night and give him some crackers and a gun, but he ends up going and actually doing fine. He ends up going a different direction, finding a fort, and inexplicably joining the Mexican-American War in exchange for some help. And his wife gets a smaller wagon, and she goes on.
Yeah, because it's so much easier to do this on a horse. It's the wagons that are the problem. It's the fact that
Yeah.
you're carrying all this heavy
And
stuff.
like the wheels are falling off the axles and you have to fix it. And then if you don't have someone who's going to have to fix it, like,
Yeah, the wheels are made out of wood. They're
yeah,
not meant to be flexy and bendy the way rubber is. So like
yeah,
he got off easy.
he did. He definitely did. So they're about to hit the Sierra Nevadas. And now, like in the Midwest where they're from in Illinois, snow is dense and freezes so you can walk on it. Like it's easy to like snowshoe in parts of the country and the world because it snows and then it freezes and then you can like walk on it. But the snow they're about to encounter is like 8 feet of powdery snow per day that is like impossible to move through, you know?
Yeah.
So is this the worst winter in a while? Like, is it also their awful luck that this is such a bad winter? And it might be true. So this is also the winter of the Franklin exhibition. And that was like also very bad, you know? So it might have just been a really bad winter for both of them,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
making a bad situation worse.
It was it would have been the worst place to cross anyways, and also it was
Like the worst winter.
unseasonably cold.
Yeah. So like later they will see like the trees around where they camped were cut like 10 to 20 feet off the ground because that's how high up they were because they were on the snow.
It's crazy.
That makes sense? Like that was like so you could see that they were like not near the ground when they cut a tree down. So on October 28th, there's a really big storm, and and the Kesebergs try to go through a pass that's now called Donner Pass, but they can't do it and they come back. And they are kind of stranded around Truckee Lake, which is now Donner Lake, but at that point it was Truckee Lake. And there's 60 people. So there's an old cabin. Oh, no, 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 I'm sorry. There's 87 people. So like 60 people go by the lake. It's the Breens, the Reeds, and the children, the Eddies, the Graves, the Murphys, the Kesebergs, and like all of their hired help. They huddle in three cabins near Truckee Lake. So there was like one old cabin that was there when they got there. So the Breens take that and they just kind of like repair it. But the other cabins are built out of like pine trees. Like they don't have time to like make them into like boards, they're like just like putting pine trees together, hoping for the best.
I also think they're called lean-tos. They're not real cabins. They're not meant to be like standalone structures.
Right. And like so there is like one that leans against a rock and like they do lean against each other kind of. So like the hired men will like have a lean-to outside of the cabin as well
Got it.
and
Got
try
it.
to like get some of the heat from the cabin. So and then 27 people with the Donners and some Teamsters are in tents at Alder Creek, which is about like 5 minutes away. So they ate their animals pretty soon because they were going to die anyway. Like, what's the point in waiting for your ox to live a couple more weeks if he's going to get sicker and sicker, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So they did that first. They did try to ice fish, but they didn't get anything, but they could see the fish under the ice, but they couldn't get any fish. And the cabins, like, etc., like, again, like you said, like, it's not like a cabin. It's not nice. They're awful. Um, I learned that they use chamber pots with, like, I was like, why do they bring the chamber pots? Oh my God. But also, like, you can't really get out of it to go to the bathroom in the middle of a blinding snowstorm.
So, what's funny is like the more you think about the logistics of what they were dealing with, like the
Hmm.
more nightmarish she gets. Where my head went to, even before you mentioned the chamber pots, was that it's the worst feeling when you're out in the cold and you have to do something physical because your
Hmm.
hands and everything gets so numb by the cold that it's like
Hmm.
it makes everything so much more painful, even if you could do it, which a lot of times you can't. And then all of a
Yeah.
sudden, and then later on, when the numbing goes away and you realize what you did to your hands, and you're like, oh my God,
Hmm.
everything hurts so much worse.
Yeah. Oh my God. And then people are like losing fingers and losing toes, all that's happening. It's bad.
Yeah.
There's also lice and bed bugs everywhere, and it just like smells terrible because it keeps snowing. So the snow is now like above their structures. So they have to like climb out to get wood and do things, which means like all of the like dank terribleness stays inside,
Yeah.
you know? So several people are die during this time. So it's about like a month and a half, and by December 16th, 15 people are like, we have to try to do something. Like we have to try to leave. We're not gonna make it. They were eating like, eating their shoes, eating their leather. You can boil like a leather strap until it's like a goo. And like you're not gonna live on that, you know?
No, it'll
So
fill your stomach, but it won't give you any nutrients.
yeah. So 15 people make some snowshoes and they set out. Later, this group is gonna be called the Forlorn Hope. It's a group of 10 men and 5 women, and they start walking. And immediately, like, again, obviously they're freezing, but also they start to get snow blind. So they don't know where they are and they can't see anything. And then I know they joke about this in the last podcast, but I'm sorry to say the short guy gets hurt by snow blindness the most. And he just like can't see. And he just sits down, and 5 months later, they find his body in a stump, and like they hope that he just got tired and like willed himself to die, you know?
That was our
So just like,
bit where he was like the original Keebler elf, I think.
yeah, oh, poor guy. Um, the Irish immigrant Patrick Dolan, he is like, we should draw straws and kill someone and eat them. People were like, no, like we're not doing that. Like, what's wrong with you? Like, they hadn't been like super long without food yet, so they're just like, no. But of course, Patrick Dolan dies first, and they think that he dies of hunger, but he probably died of like hypothermia,
Right.
because they weren't like they were hungry, but you can last a long time being hungry, longer than you'd think. So probably didn't need to eat him, but like they've been eating their leather and everything is terrible. So he's the first person that they eat. They probably, like a lot of people do when you eat someone, is you remove their heads and feet so you forget that you're eating a person. They probably eat the liver, the heart, and the kidneys first because that's the most nutrient part. And they also, when they would do this, especially this group, they would make sure that you didn't eat your family members.
Yeah, they like the alive rules.
Yeah. To cook the food, they would just light entire trees on fire, like dead trees, and try to like go around it and then cook. Unfortunately, there's a part where if they would have walked over a ridge, they would have been really close to where they wanted to be, but they went the wrong way. But again, to your point, like, how are you supposed to know that?
That happened now that I mention it, that happened in Alive too. Where if they
Yeah,
just like crested this one mountain, they were like on the edge of it, they would have looked down and seen a road that people were just like
yeah,
driving on.
yeah. But you're like, you just don't. I mean, how are you supposed to figure that out?
Yeah.
All the things. So they at one point they do kill a deer. They shoot at it and they miss, and then they like attack it and slit its throat and drink its blood. And then so two of the people who find the deer, they are like a day ahead of the other group people in the group, and they're like shooting guns in the air so they can hear them and like going to meet to get the meat. So they do that, but they do end up, everybody else who dies, they do eat them. Lewis and Salvador are like, everyone's looking at us like we are covered in ketchup, you know. Like, because they're like, we don't know you guys. You guys are just like here, the two Miwoks who are there to help them. And so they run away. And by the time that they get to them, like they literally follow their bloody footprints to find them because their feet are bleeding so badly. They're so sick and they're so um, just like so malnourished that they shoot them and then eat them as well. So those guys knew that that was going to happen. Um, so after 33 days of walking in the snow, 7 of the 15 people are left. And this is when they walk into that native village and the people are like, these are ghosts. Like
Wait,
the children,
how many were still alive?
7.
Seven. Okay.
Yep. 5 women and 2 men. They were almost naked because their clothes had been like rotting off of them and they didn't have much clothing to begin with. So they were like nearly naked. They didn't have shoes. Their feet were black and they kind of walk out of the nothingness and go into this village and like the children start to cry, because they're like, are these ghosts? Like, what is this? Like, these people are awful. So they feed them like acorns and nuts to try to get them a little bit of sustenance. And then William Eddy from the group, he goes to find a small community in Sacramento, and that's when the rescues begin. But they walked for 33 days before they
Wait,
found anyone.
the Forlorn Hope did. Okay.
Hmm. So meanwhile, James Reed is making promises to go to war. He might have gone for a little bit and come back. He had tried to rescue them in October. They weren't where he thought they would be because he thought they would have gotten further than they did. So he couldn't even go in to rescue them because he couldn't get past the part they were stuck in, you know?
Jeez.
So the first relief comes on February 18th. When they go to where the cabins should be, like where they heard the cabins should be, and the reliefs are like, some like single men from the forts and all these things who are like coming together to go help them. It's sort of have like a promise of like getting paid later, that kind of thing. Um, when they get there were like holes in the snow and some smoke, but no cabins. And they realize that the cabins were buried, and they kind of look down a hole, and Mrs. Murphy pops her head down the snow hole, and she says, "Are you men from California or from heaven?" Just like can't believe I'm seeing another person. Of all the people that were left at the camp, 13 of them died. The roofs were rotting under the snow. It smelled horrible. And there are 44 people left. And the people who rescued them were like, this is just the worst thing I've ever seen.
Out of 80, right?
Yeah, it was 87 in total. Yeah, so 15
Okay.
had gone on the Forlorn Hope. 7 of those people made it, and now they're back. And 21 people leave with the first group. 3 of them will die on the way because it isn't now that they're rescued, still they don't have like they still have to get out, like they still
Yeah.
have to go for a walk through the snow out. And a lot of the kids go in like the first one. 3 of them, like I said, died on the way. Poor William Hook was 13 years old, I believe, and he dies from eating too much when he gets there because you can't do that either, you know.
What a horrible way to.
Poor baby.
Yeah.
They actually meet James Reed on the way, and they're like, "What the hell? Like, we can't believe that we can see you again." He's on his way to go with like the second relief, and they end up going to Sutter's Fort for safety and staying there. Second relief, arrives back at the Donner camp on March 1st. Poor Lavinia Murphy, she's the one that they thought was 50 because when they find her, she is nearly dead in a cabin with like a bunch of kids. She's like taking care of like 15 kids by herself, and she's like nearly blind from everything. Like everything is terrible. She doesn't even make it out. She dies before they even get back to her because she can't walk out right now. But the second relief takes 17 more people out, mostly kids. On the way out, there's more snow, and the kids just stop moving. Like they're just like, I can't do this, Like you can't. They're like, we cannot physically do this. When the kids sit down, they call their camp Starved Camp. And that is where they will eat Elizabeth Graves and her 5-year-old son, Franklin. And some of the kids were later carried all the way down the mountain, like by mountain men. They just picked them up and carried them because the kids just like absolutely couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Um, they were probably, so they ate Elizabeth Graves and Franklin in Starved Camp, but they were obviously doing this at Donner Lake as well. Um, Kesselberg is one of the German immigrants, and he had really just like lost his mind. He was by, when they found him, he was by himself in a cabin. He had George Donner's head in a pot, and there were bones everywhere. So he definitely ate George Donner. He told William Eddy that he ate his son, and he said that Mrs. Donner had stopped by begging him to hide her money because a lot of them had money that was also heavy, and they were like, she absolutely did not do that. You killed her and ate her. And then he had to like, finally, after they tried to kill him, he disclosed that he had a bunch of her money like hidden somewhere.
Basically,
So
let me go and I'll tell you where the money's hidden.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So Kesselberg walked out at some point. I don't know how he got out. Later, he would sue some of the survivors for defamation, and he won $1 in court and had to pay the court fees because they were like, no. Later, he said, quote, I often think that the Almighty has signaled me out among all men on the face of the earth in order to see how much hardship, suffering, and misery a human being can bear. And then everybody else called him the cannibal of the Donner Party. So
Yeah.
didn't go great for him.
Justifiably so.
Um, of our last to be rescued, came out Jean Baptiste Trudeau, 16 years old, was taken out, and the people that he had been watching over were Eliza, Georgina, Francis, and Simon, who were 3, 4, 6, and 8. So a 16-year-old was taking care of the last of the kids on their way out. Um, Also, just a mention is a lot of the places that the Forlorn Hope camped at, and like where people died and where they gave up and where they were going, was like they were just sitting on top of gold and they didn't know.
No
You know,
way. I didn't know that.
not that the gold would have helped them, or whatever, but like it's exactly where the gold rush would be is where they were right now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Um, so later, a Mormon battalion during the Mexican-American War would pull all of the bodies and all the bones, everything that was left at Donner Lake, like at a time when there was no snow, put it in one of the cabins, in a hole and just burn the whole thing. Just to, like get rid of it. Um, Lansford Hastings received death threats, obviously, because of what he had done. Um, and someone who had done it before the Donner Party, when it was like hard, but not like you get stuck hard. Tried to kill him and like, tried to, it was like yelling at him about the things. And Hastings said, quote, he said, what did he say? He could say nothing, but he was very sorry and that he meant well. Annoying.
Jeez.
Um, of the 48 people who survived, no Reeds or Breens died, but there were lots of orphans, and a lot of widows. William Eddy was alone. He lost his whole family. Only 3 mules made it. So 3 animals made it out. And then also most of their possessions were gone.
Yeah,
Like
of course.
obviously, like nothing they brought came through. Virginia Reed, one of the girls who made it, wrote a letter to her cousin Mary Keyes that ended up being published in a newspaper. But on May 16th, 1847, she said, I'm not going to tell you everything that happened, but here's some of the things. And then at, at the end, she said, quote, never take no cutoffs and hurry along as fast as you can, which is
Yeah, wise
good
words.
advice. And then a lot of the women who were widowed and left alone, they lived their lives out in the West. They married, some of them married several times because their husbands were like killed in the war or killed in, having like arguments with people or just like falling, whatever, all the things that, so the West is so dangerous. And then a lot of some of the last survivors, they died in like the 1920s, because they were kids when it had happened and they died like in their 80s, which is crazy as well.
They survived that to also survive the Great Depression, which is
I
kind of
know,
rough.
for real. Um, yeah, every time's a rough time to be alive, as we know. So it is what it is.
There's
Yeah,
gradients to rough, though.
there are though, there are. But yeah, that is the story of the Donner Party. So now I've been to Donner Lake. It's very pretty, but I've been there in the summer.
I've never been in the Sierra Nevadas, never done Tahoe or Reno or any of that.
It's very pretty. Like my aunt owns a house in Tahoe, and I remember like a couple years ago there was a winter that I mean, there's winters there that are so bad all the time, and there was one that was so bad that like her and my uncle were like on the roof shoveling snow off the roof so the roof wouldn't collapse, and that's in their like nice house in Tahoe. you
That's
know?
wild. Yeah.
So like it's definitely like there's places in Tahoe that like you can't go during certain times still, obviously. Like it's not like a thing. There's also like that there's also like a Disney ski resort up there that's like supposed to have be like some of the best snow in America.
I
That's your jam.
I heard Jeremy Renner. Remember, you know that name, right?
Hmm.
And he was talking about what happened with his accident, where we all thought he was like
Yeah.
dead or dying. Have you heard the story?
What happened to him again?
So apparently, he has a amazing house in the Sierra Nevadas in Tahoe,
Hmm.
and he has a what are they called? Black cat or
Oh yeah, 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 like a snowmobile kind of
like a
thing.
snowmobile thing,
Yeah.
and you know what I'd heard is like he got injured by this thing,
Hmm.
and I didn't really appreciate what it really was, and then he explained what it is, and it's like a tractor, like
Right,
it's like a
right.
tractor sized thing. It's wider than like a highway road or lane would be,
Oh.
and it has treads like a tank. It has tank treads that rolls
Hmm.
over the ice or the snow. And so he was out doing stuff on his property with this thing, and well, that part of it's the relevant part because I was like, oh, like even if you're that rich and have that great of a place, you need to
Right.
also buy this $250,000 tractor
Exactly. I
thing
was
to
gonna say
like
that sounds
get
huge. Yeah.
around. Yeah,
Yeah. Like you
but
can't just like walk around there. Even like with today, yeah, you have to be like exceptionally well equipped.
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, he ended up leaving it running while he was standing on the tread, and
Oh,
then
they're up.
something knocked it out of gear, and then he fell, and his whole body was laid out lengthwise for the entire tread as the thing started moving over his entire body.
Oh my
And
God.
so yeah, it was gnarly, it sounds like, but it also illustrated like how crazy,
Hmm.
like wild that part of the country is, even for
Even now. Yeah.
yeah, even now, even for the richest people.
Totally. Totally.
So I do want to
Wild.
visit. I only know it through The Godfather because that's where the wedding scene took place.
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
It was their house in Tahoe.
It's
So
yeah, it's very pretty. Yeah. Reno is very pretty. That whole area is nice.
fun. Well,
Yeah.
that was great. That was a fun episode. It was really nostalgic. It took me right back to a lot of those old episodes.
Yeah. Fun.
Um, cool. What else you got for us?
We pronounced papal incorrectly in our
Papal?
last, yeah, it's papal.
What'd I say?
Papal.
I'm sorry.
It's
Sorry, everyone.
papal. Nadine pointed that out. So we apologize. It's papal.
I
Since
probably
we
won't go back and
talked,
edit the
I've shared,
episode.
since we've talked, oh no, don't do that. I've shared a lot of memes with you because we're very excited that the Pope is from Chicago.
Hey, the Bears are gonna make a comeback.
Oh my
This
God,
is a
I've,
sign.
I've seen so many hilarious memes. There was one like a whole like to the tune of High Hopes by Panic at the Disco. It was called Chi-Town Pope. It was so funny. It's like we have a Chi-Town Pope. Like everyone is just like hilarious. They're like, oh my God, like the Bears are definitely gonna win this year. Like he's a Sox fan, whatever. There's only one team, one football team in Chicago. It's the Bears. And then like I sent you that one where it was like the white smoke was actually like the Cardinals grilling like brats.
That's
Oh,
funny.
it's so funny.
Yeah,
Love a Chicago joke.
I'm not religious whatsoever, but there is a certain sense of pride that he is an American.
I know it's fun, and he's a good one.
And he's a nice
For
guy. He's a good one. It
for
was
all the
interesting.
that we could get, we got one of the better, the kinder
Yeah,
ones.
and it goes against the whole thin pope, fat pope thing around like
Mm.
their ideology shifts dramatically from like more progressive
Hmm.
to conservative. It sounds like this guy's more in line with Pope Francis.
Yeah, that
Um,
sounds like they like knew each other and like were
yeah,
friends. So
yeah.
that was
So,
cool.
um, cool.
Congratulations, Chicago, for producing a pope.
Yeah, way to go, guys. You did it
Good
all.
job. Congratulations to the Bears for the upcoming win.
Um, cool. Do we have any listener mail besides the Nadine
Nope, that
talk?
was it. Thank you,
All right,
Nadine. We're sorry.
cool. Well, thank you for sharing, Taylor. I guess if there's nothing else, we can go ahead and cut things off.
Cool. Yeah, well, find us on all social medias. We have a Patreon, Doomed to Fail Pod, and let us know if you have any ideas. Doomedtofellpod@gmail.com. And thank you, Justin, for suggesting this. I loved, you know, revisiting it. Not like we ever did it, but like there was a while ago where I thought about it a lot. So
It's an incredible story.
grateful to be able to fly over the Rocky Mountains.
Yeah. And the more you know about it, the more terrifying it gets, which is
Yeah,
fun.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
cool. Well, thanks, Taylor. We'll go ahead and cut
Thank
things
you.
off.